Thanks, Susie. This is me. I'm Dr. Antoinette Taylor, as Susie has said. Just a little bit of information about my background work here in Illinois and across the state. Hey, I'm looking at something I need to update already on that. For the National Writing Team, that paper has been in draft form for a long time. It was supposed to come out and then the pandemic hit, so it stayed in draft form. Last week, it came out. It is released. I am so excited to have been a part of the National Writing Team for this. So as Susie said earlier, this is actually a series, and it's very much built like a smorgasbord. We'd love for you to join all of them. But if you can't, sometimes you have to pick and choose what you can put on your plate. But do note that on February and March, we will be talking about multi-tiered system of supports. And so this newly released national paper that's out, as well as some of the specific laws and rules and regulations that have been put in place in Illinois, will definitely be a part of these two professional learning opportunities, February 2nd and March 2nd. There is a flyer for this, but just in case, you will see right here on the website for ECPL, you can register for any of these professional learning opportunities by going through the ECPL website. So why is this series called Some Assembly Required? And the reason why is we thought about teaching children and growing children, from the children that are born to the human beings that we want them to be, the quality of living that we want them to have through education. And the truth is, you just don't get from here to there through osmosis, wishful thinking, or even good intentions. There is literally some assembly required. And I think about those days when my children were younger, and you'd go to the store and you'd see this beautiful bike or this nice equipment, and it looks so nice on the shelf. And then you say, I want that one. And then they bring out a box. And on the box, you only see the picture of that beautiful finished product that was on the shelf. And then the small print of it says there is some assembly required. So yes, you can get to that finished product, but what they're letting us know is it's going to take a little bit of work on our end. So some assembly required to get our young children from where we're looking at them here, from the infant toddler stage, all the way up to high school and college and career. As Susie already said, this is sponsored by ECPL, Early Childhood Professional Learning. It is in collaboration with the Kindergarten Individual Development Survey, KIDS. Michelle Escapa is the KIDS coordinator. And together, ECPL and KIDS make up the Pre-2K project. So what is the Pre-2K project, Dr. Taylor? The Pre-2K project was literally inspired by the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report. You do have a link for this that's going to be shared with you on a resource page that came out in 2018. And what that report did was, it was actually commissioned by the Illinois legislative body. And there was a team of people that did a review of all things preschool or early childhood education and care to kindergarten, transitioning from families, districts, legislative pieces that are intact. And they put out a report that said, if we really want for Illinois to have a seamless early childhood education and care to kindergarten transition, they gave us a list of things that should be done. Some of them were very practical things, like as practitioners, as consultants, we could do these things right away. Some of them were legislative, which means the legislative body actually needs to create laws. But what ECPL and KIDS did was they took out that KTAC, it's commonly known as KTAC, that KTAC report, and literally combed through it and looked at all of the themes. So the summary of findings from everything in the report is linked to themes. So there's a theme around aligned teaching and learning, aligned assessments and data, and strengthening cross-sector partnerships. And Michelle Escapa, Lynn Burgett, and Cindy Berry Cindy Berry and Lynn Burgett are part of ECPL, and Michelle Escapa is the professional learning coordinator for kids. They created the Pre-2K project so that the hard part of going through that report and figuring out, okay, how do we make this come to life? They did it through the Pre-2K project. And one of the things that we learned is that people were saying, we don't have enough time together. Pre-K folks learn one thing and kindergarten folks learn something else, but it would be nice to kind of know that we're learning the same types of information. So exactly what ECPL is doing, Kindergarten Individual Development Survey team is also doing the same thing so that we can have better cross-sector conversations about aligned or crosswalked or correlated data and teaching and learning practices. So this again is all a part of the Pre-2K project. This entire series through ECPL and Kids is offering something similar as well. So first things first, I can't believe we're still having to say this, but last year, every time we did a professional learning opportunity, we had to put out some preface statements. And we are still in the moment of journeying through COVID-19. So these are the same preface statements that were put out before. The federal government, the Department of Education, was very clear. This was when COVID-19 first impacted us. So that was the previous presidential administration and the current presidential administration. And these first 4 bullet points that you see, they were very clear. The federal law of the land is the federal law of the land. That is not going to change. There is nothing in the works to amend any of these federal laws. And they were very clear in telling state agencies and local school districts that everything that's within those federal laws, we are still held accountable for. Our state has an Every Student Succeeds Act plan that was sent to the Department of Education. We still must implement that plan. So what am I saying? I am saying that nothing that is coming to you today is meant to circumvent or impede anything that has to do with students with disabilities that's written in the law, IDEA, the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, either the federal law itself or our Every Student Succeeds Act state plan. In addition, we've all seen the blast, the COVID-19 updates coming from the Illinois State Board of Education, the COVID-19 updates coming from executive orders from the governor's office. Nothing here that's said today is meant to impede or supplant any of those guidelines coming from ISB or executive orders from the governor's office. And then finally, at the local level, there are collective bargaining agreements. And there are district and director determinations for, I should say the 21-22 academic year. When in doubt, refer to your collective bargaining agreements. When in doubt, refer to what is your district or your director asking for you to do. So for instance, we'll talk about lesson planning a little bit in here. There are some districts whose collective bargaining agreements, they don't necessarily have to lesson plan. So although we will talk about it here briefly in this professional learning opportunity, if your district says, hey, we don't have to do lesson plans, that does not, what we're talking about today as an evidence-based practice does not circumvent what your bargaining agreement is for your local area. Okay, so I've got to get all of that out just so that we know and we're all on the same page. You're tired. We're all tired of Zoom or WebEx or all of these virtual platforms. And so how do we deal with that? And knowing that we still need to come together as partners, we're going to do what's called grammar grace. We are not going to have a microscopic or magnifying lens when you're in the chat saying, oh, that period isn't in the right place. You've got to dot every I and cross every T. Forget about it, okay? When we ask you to go in the chat, just jump in there, get it in there. We're showing grammar grace. This is a safe space. If it's not spelled correctly, if the period isn't in the right place, if the semicolon isn't in the right place, we're all good with that. We're just going to jump in and share our thoughts, and we will figure out the language as we go along. We are going to go straight through to 5:30. We are not going to take a break. So just use adult self-care. If you need to go use the washroom, grab some tea. If an important phone call comes in and you've got to take it, just make sure you take yourself off camera, go do what you need to do, and then come back. Again, we're not going to take a break. We're going to try to give you a little bit of time back at the end of our time together today. So just be prepared. We're going to go straight through. And this is interactive, so we'll have times where I'll kind of stop, especially near the end when we're going to kind of do, for lack of a scientific terminology, a case study. And so then we'll be asking you to come off mute and be willing to share it, or you can share in the chat. So now that I've talked to you about who I am and all these preface statements, love to know who you are. And although I do see your name, are you an administrator, a consultant, a teacher, family specialist? So if you would please, there it is right up there on the poll. Just let us know. And if you don't find yourself in any of these terms, administrator, consultant, go ahead in the chat and put in what your current role is. And you should be able to go right in there and click the poll and let us know. If you have trouble doing that, put it in the chat as well. Feel free to put that in the chat. Oh, yes. Anissa, am I saying your name correctly? You can come off mute. Group home daycare owner. Love, love, love. This is wonderful. I have to just applaud ECPL and really trying to make sure that everyone under the early childhood education and care umbrella, it gets this information and knows they're welcome to be here. So our home child care providers are definitely, it's so important that we're all together, because what that KTAC report told us is that if we're not communicating with each other, from districts to charter schools to home child care providers to community-based Head Start programs, what happens is the children and the families are the ones that miss out. So Anissa, welcome.
Thank
Instructional leader, Latanya. Hey, Miss Latanya, how are you? Sherry, Assistant Director of Learning. Ooh. Sherry, would you mind?
Hi, Dr. Taylor. How are you?
I'm good, my dear. Sherry, would you mind either in the chat or coming off mute? Are you the Assistant Director of an early learning community-based organization or within a school district? And Denise. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So playing that dual role.
Sorry, I turned off. I guess I keep turning off the wrong thing. I'm with CCR&R, so we are community-based. We are a grantee for community partners here in Kankakee, Kendall County.
Okay, welcome, Sherry. CCR&R, very nice. So you all cover a lot,
Yes.
a whole lot of areas and with the CCR&R. So we're going to give you a lot of great information to take back today. And as this is our poll, about 69% of us are teachers, 8% consultants, administrators, and then 50% fall into other. We do not have any classroom assistants or paraprofessionals, family specialists, or families with us tonight, but please, 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 we want to remember, it takes all of us to move this work forward. So if you have a classroom assistant or a paraprofessional, this information applies to them. And then obviously everything that we're doing, we want that homeschool connection to be a part of it. And there's actually some resources we're going to talk about later about how to help families bring the standards to life in their home. A couple of more questions for you, so just hang in there with me. What year did you start? And this you're going to put in the chat. What year did you start your current role? And the second question is, were you previously a preschool or kindergarten teacher to the role that you're in today? So these you're going to put in the chat. What year did you start your current role? And were you previously a preschool or kindergarten teacher? Oh, Denise, I just started in August. I taught first grade for 31 years before that. Congratulations. Anise, 2001. Very nice, very interesting. 2021. No, I am a first-year teacher. Can we just give it up for Tess? Woo, go into your little icons there and put up that, that little splurge of confetti or a hand clap. Tess, even though we're in this moment of COVID, you still joined the best profession in the whole world, I might say, and the best part of that profession, which is early childhood, right time and right space. So welcome to the field. Know that we are all your colleagues. Oh, Sherry, first experience with Early Head Start 2021. Look at all these, Susie, look at all these, Rachel. This is my first year in pre-K, but I did kindergarten 2 years ago. Yes. I'm loving all of this. 1996. We have a wealth of information, and there is a method to my madness for asking that question about when you started your current role, and if you previously taught preschool or kindergarten. Thank you all so much for sharing. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Our veterans, thank you for sticking around. We need you, right? We need all of us. And to our neophytes, welcome, welcome, welcome. Know that ECPL is here to serve you with wonderful, wonderful professional learning opportunities. Know your colleagues are here to serve you, and know that myself and Susie, we are here to just make this a pleasurable first or early years experience for you. Okay, another chat. What type of program do you have? Is it community-based, which includes Head Start, Preschool for All, Preschool for All expansion, which as of a couple of years ago, I'm sorry, this is a poll. A couple of years ago, there really is no more federal. Everything that's PFAE is considered state. Home-based. If you are a district, are you a kindergarten district, charter, or private? And then again, if we missed anything, go ahead and put it in the chat. And the reason we ask this is because more and more, especially once kids and ECPL started doing these pre-2K project professional learning opportunities, a lot of times we do have people that say, I am my district's early childhood coordinator. And so their role is literally birth to third grade. And we've had a lot of people that come on and say, I'm a kindergarten teacher. So we just want to make sure that if you are in kindergarten or above, we want to make sure that we don't miss that, so we can speak directly to the work that you are currently doing. So the poll has closed, and Susie will publish that shortly. And then we have one more chat. And whoever that 7% is of other, if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat again, just to remind me. Preschool for All expansion, okay. Head Start and home base. I just want to remind us again, as we go through this, we're learning from each other. So Head Start is so grounded in a lot of the Common Core standards. In fact, Head Start, because they are federally funded and have a lot of federal frameworks, they were actually the first to look at the Head Start frameworks and correlate them with the Common Core standards when they were being adopted across the country. So a lot of what PFAE is just right in correlation with Head Start and even the Common Core standards, which we now call the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, was really built in correlation, or I should say in collaboration with Head Start. And then our final chat before you get to listen to me talk a little bit more, briefly in the chat, share your purpose for joining the conversation today. And this is being recorded, so this allows for myself, for Susie, for ECPL, it allows us to be able to go back and look at the work. Believe it or not, this is not the first year of this professional learning series, but it's completely changed from last year. Why? Because when we go back and we look at the information from the chats, especially from other recordings, it lets us know, okay, people wanted more information of this. We need some more clarity around this. And so we literally go back, we keep the content the same, but we revamp it to keep it relevant. So what we're asking you to put in the chat, it is for conversation, which is great, but it's also good to let us know exactly how we can improve, and it can inform our work. To learn more about everything, isn't that the truth, Rachel? This COVID-19 has helped us know we're not as smart as we thought we are. So there's a lot of learning we all need to do. You know what, Leanne, yes, you are now my hashtag BFF on Facebook. I love being Candace, like, look, I need the CEU, so like, let's get from here to 5:30 so I can do this evaluation and get my professional development hours. Love that. Interested in the topic. Denise, yes, I'm brand new in pre-K. You need to learn everything. Stick with us all throughout the series, Denise. You are going to learn so much. Need to update. Who said that? Let me scroll back up a little bit. Audra, yes. Needed to update informational skills. That's such an honest thing to say. And it's really what we're all about. Continuous quality improvement means we never, including myself, we never get to the point to where we say, well, I know everything about that. I don't need to update. I don't need to review. I don't need to revise my skills. So yes, needing to update information and skills, learn about state standards. Anissa, like, you know what? I didn't know what to do, so I just started making up my own. And actually, one of the last slides I'm going to say is, so what's your point? And Anissa, you kind of just answered that question. What's the point of all of this? Is because we want to be able to be collegial. And if we want to be fair for our children and families and ourselves as colleagues, what does evidence-based practice mean? It means that there's evidence that what we are implementing, there is a generalization to the quality of it and the outcomes of it, not only for students and families, but for us as educators as well. So you put your own flair, yes, but as far as the standards itself, we need to understand what is already written. And I'll be very honest in saying it's an equity imperative. It is an equity imperative for every child that lives in Illinois. It is not, I mean, for students that are on the west side of Chicago versus Wilmette, for students that are in large districts like Elgin U46, or students that are in small, hey, in my district, there's one elementary school, one middle school, and one high school. The equity imperative is that each of those children deserves to have an opportunity to learn on a leveled playing field. And the standards is one way that we are able to do that. Trying to learn and absorb it all. This is also new to me. So hopefully by the time we finish today, will you have a deep knowledge of the professional learning standard, of the learning standards? No. Will you have a contextual knowledge? Yes. And it is our prayer that that contextual knowledge will give you that comfort level to dive deeper into the standards as you implement your daily practice. Because the truth is, the devil is not in the details, but guess what? The diamond is in the rough. So you'll get into there and you'll keep digging and digging and digging, and then you'll find that bright, shiny part to add to your practice of building and the foundation, right, of everything is the standards. That's why this is the first one. Everything that we're going to talk about moving forward, including multi-tiered system of supports, is going to be built on the foundation of going back to those standards, going back to the standards. Thank you all so much for sharing. This is, I'm just already excited, always excited with the input. Okay, so just how many standards are there? There's a lot. There are standards that are geared towards adults. There are standards that are geared towards students. And within those standards that are geared towards students, they're broken down into a spectrum. So we have standards for students, is what we're focusing on today. The professional learning standards for adults are very important, but our goal today is to just help you again have that contextual working knowledge of the standards for students, how they connect, and just a little bit of background of how we got from here to there, as they say on Facebook, how it started and how it's going. So in other words, to quote our friend Oprah, you have standards and you have standards and you have standards, or as they used to say down south, all God children have some kind of standards. Okay, method to my madness. Remember before when I asked you, were you a preschool or kindergarten teacher previously? This poll that's coming up now is specifically going to help us see who started early childhood education and care or kindergarten after the 14-15 school year. So if you started after the 14-15 school year, click yes. And if you started before the 14-15 school year, click no. So again, if you are teaching and you taught early childhood education and care or kindergarten after 2014-15, you're going to click yes. And if it was before that, you will click no. And then Susie will publish the poll. Okay. So we look at this and we see that balance. Of why this is so important. There's a significant amount of people as we go into this. Thanks, Susie. And this is not, it is a repeated slide, but it's not an accident. I put this on here on purpose because the truth is the standards that we use today go all the way back to 2010. And we have not had a significant amount of professional learning on those standards since the 2013-14 school year. So for all of those that were feeling like, well, I need a refresher, or it's like, no one's ever really told me, I've kind of had to make it up as I go along, we're about to find out why. So in Illinois, all learning is focused on standards. Illinois Early Learning Guidelines, Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, and the new Illinois Learning Standards, which is commonly known also as the Common Core Standards. The Illinois Early Learning Guidelines span from birth to age 3/36 months. So I want you to kind of conjure up in your mind, why do you say age 3 when 36 months and age 3, life on this earth is the same amount of time. But when you think of 3-year-old and you think of 36-month-old, do you kind of feel a little bit different about the maturation of a 36-month-old and a 3-year-old? And I can see on the screen, a lot of you are like shaking your head. 36-month-old almost kind of makes it feel like toddlerish, right? But that 3-year-old, that's that I'm a big girl now. I'm a big boy. I'm going to the big, the big kids school, the big kids classroom. Yet time span on this earth is literally the same. Oh, yes, yes, Miss Latanya. That explains why my teachers are struggling. Yes, because there's been no formal training on the standards. There's been no formal training on the standards. And so if we're talking about benchmarks and ODLs from my teaching strategies or DRDP, a core, people that use high scope, some of them use core early learning standards. When we have not focused on, the early learning scale, when we have not focused on the standards, which all of those things TS goals speak to, teachers are kind of like this. Or as Anissa so candidly, and by the way, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So Anissa, Susie and I aren't going to tell anybody that you said that. But the truth is, if we don't know, we make it up as we go along. Not so unlike our students when they don't know, right? When we're not clear about the expectations for them, when we don't have it in front of them, when we're not reminding them without nagging them, then a 4-year-old just kind of like, well, in my mind, this is what it should be. And they just go with their flow. So it is so important that we think about this and then use it for our practice. So a 3-year-old conjures up the image of a little bit more maturity. Whereas a 36-month-old, same time here on earth, but we're not that shocked when we think of them. We call them like an early 3 rather than a standard or a later 3, right? Which is why the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards are for children ages what? 3 to kindergarten enrollment age. So already the Illinois State Board of Education is telling us we don't have to have gaps, because the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines go from birth to age 3 or 36 months, and the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards start for children ages 3 to kindergarten enrollment. So you might be able to guess what the next thing I'm going to say is what? The new Illinois Learning Standards, kindergarten standards, start for all students who are attending a publicly funded kindergarten. So right there, we see that equity imperative being addressed. We see that pre-K to K transition being addressed. Early Head Start, PI, which is Prevention Initiative, to PFA, Prevention Initiative to PFAE, Early Head Start to Head Start. We're making sure that we're aligning everything from birth to kindergarten. Now, for those of us that are fans or members of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, this is not a surprise, because early childhood is in fact what? Birth to age 8, which according to when your birthday is, that literally goes up to 3rd grade. And yes, Audra, we're trying not to let there be any gaps. And again, this is about supporting the educators. And in educators, I mean anyone. To me, we are all educators, even myself as a consultant. We are educators because this is the field that we know and we love and we are in. What do we want? We want there to be no gaps of success and achievement for teachers, for educators, because if educators are successful, the natural overflow of that is what? It pours into the children, it pours into the families. So let's break that down a little bit. The history of where we are today starts with the Common Core standards. In June 2010, the National Governors Association, along with the Council of Chief State School Officers, came together, and what they realized is that from state to state, there was no continuity of care or continuity of practices when it came to the learning standards for students. And so one state could be doing something completely different from another state. We know we live in a very mobile society, and if the truth be told, a lot of this had to do with addressing concerns of military families who could be, traveling from one state to another state quite often with any given school year. And so the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers is just whomever the state superintendent is of the state, or whoever that state Department of Ed person is. There is a council that brings all of them together so that they can talk about systems of practice, of care, issues, bright spots, things that they need to be looking at across the country. And they were the ones that said, we could solve a lot of problems if we had a common language when it comes to state standards. So that across the country, everyone has an opportunity to know and be able to do the same behavior, knowledge, and skills, and to teach them. The purpose of that was to distinguish between what children are doing at the beginning of the year and give ourselves as educators a break to say, they come to you at the beginning of the year. Do not panic if you don't see certain things in your children, because the standards are really meant to help us know what do we want to work towards for the end of each grade level, or when it comes to early childhood education and care, the end of their time with us. So for those of us that are in early Head Start or PI, it's where will that child be at the end of that 36-month-old or 3-year-old period? Those of us that are in preschool for all, Head Start, preschool for all expansion, where will they be at the end of the time that they age out of our programs? So what behavior, what skill, and what knowledge do we want children to have at the end of their time with us? Who gets to determine how to implement that? Staff, educators. So once you know the standards, right, and you understand them, then the teacher says, well, based off of the students I have, this is the learning approach I'm going to use to implement the standards through the curriculum. So whether it's creative curriculum, whether it's high scope, whether it's big day, whatever your curriculum is, that curriculum is correlated to the standards, and you're determining how you're going to implement that curriculum through the lens of the standards to help all of the students meet their needs. And this includes students with disabilities, students who are multilingual learners, students who may be experiencing temporary homelessness, students in care. Literally all means all. States did not have to adopt the Common Core standards. They were given the opportunity to volunteer. 45 states initially adopted. Illinois was one of them. So after that happened, now we've got to figure out how to bring this adoption to life. So in June 24, 2010, Illinois adopted the Common Core standards. And the State Board of Education decided that between 2010 and 2013, all districts should be prepared and ready to teach the Common Core standards, all grades K through 12. Now, right there, you're scratching your head like, K through 12, isn't this early childhood professional learning? Yes, it is. We know that K3 is within that early childhood range, but what about early childhood? The Common Core standards plus the Illinois Early Learning Standards equals IELDS, which is what we have now. The moment our state adopted the Common Core standards, a team was put together to look at the former Illinois Learning Standards and make sure that if you're elevating K-12 from here to here, and you don't elevate the Illinois Learning Standards or the early learning guidelines, then what happens is we elevate the K-12, but we leave ECPL or we leave early childhood here. So a team was put together to make sure that there are standards in place without leaving the early childhood education and care community behind, that was appropriate for any and all early learning environments. And that's the Illinois Early Learning Development Standards. The purpose is to provide developmentally appropriate expectations. Again, that's an equity imperative. What is our goal for each child? And although sometimes the journey that we take to get our children there, the goal should at least be the same. For the IELDS, we were smart enough to realize that you're going, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, you do have to take very broad concepts and break them down so that they're teachable and manageable for educators. So we moved away from that. Well, we're gonna get it straight K-12, and then we'll push it down to early childhood education and care later. And we've all heard that and advocated against it. Instead of pushing down to early childhood education and care, start with early childhood education and care and build up. Because if you get it right at the foundation, then everything you put on top of that foundation is going to be on very stable ground. So as I said before, we adopted in June 2010. They were implemented September 2013. Here goes back to that, well, what's the method to my madness of asking all those questions about when did you start in that poll? Trainer of Trainers started in August of 2013, because by September 2013, everyone was K-12 was going to be mandated to implement those standards. So we wanted early childhood education and care to be ready for that. Trainer of Trainers started August 2013. I know Susie remembers that, all those books and those meetings, and it was like, oh my gosh, another meeting, all day meetings. And then guess what? By 2014, mid 2014, 15, the training stopped. Because in a lot of people's minds, well, the standards were released, they're all being implemented. We've done the training of trainers from August 2013 to August 2014. It's implemented, people got it. But guess what we forgot? New people are coming into the field every year. And not even every year, according to when you graduate, mid-year you can come into the field. Some of you have shared today, and I'm so appreciative that you shared that. I was in 3rd grade, and then I was asked to go to 1st grade. Or I wasn't an administrator, now I am. I'm administrator of an early learning building. So if you did not have the opportunity to discuss this, you're kind of operating in the blind. Here's some important updates. Before we even did these standards, surveys went out. And people were asked this question: do you feel prepared to implement the Common Core state standards? You are looking at what was said in April 2013 from those who responded to the survey. Notice only 13.5% of all respondents said I feel completely prepared. The interesting thing of that was that those who said they felt completely prepared were those in administrators who were superintendents of districts. The flip side of that was the ones who were actually having to implement the standards fell in here. 66.9% of educators said, I feel somewhat prepared. That's a big number. 14.9 said, I don't feel prepared at all. And 4.7 were still like, I don't even know enough to know that I don't know. that shows us a little bit of a disconnect. And this is not an egregious statement against administrators or superintendents. Of course, superintendents would say they're fully prepared because they were the ones that the state board is saying, hey, you've got to get your districts ready for this. So they were having all the meetings and then operating on the belief that the trickle down effect was, well, I'm meeting with my team, telling my team to get everybody ready. So we're fully prepared. So you see here, that wasn't the case. So my question now is, if we did a similar poll of pre-K and kindergarten educators today in the chat, what do you think would have the highest percentage? I feel completely prepared to implement the Illinois Early Learning Development Standards or the kindergarten New Illinois Learning Standards. I feel somewhat prepared. I do not feel prepared at all. I don't know if I'm prepared. Which one do you think would have the highest percentage? Go ahead and put that in the chat. A lot of people are saying, I don't know if I'm prepared. I feel somewhat prepared. I do not feel prepared at all. And thank you all again for being honest. So you see, none of us are in that I feel completely prepared category. I can't thank ECPL enough for constantly saying we've got to do more to make sure that people at least have that contextual knowledge about the standards, because it's so very important. And before we move on to start digging into the standards, I will tell you that the current superintendent of our state, Superintendent Carmen Ayala, she was the first when she was appointed to her role and then confirmed by the Senate. And I'm gonna put this up and ask you all to briefly share why you answered the way you did in the chat. While you all are doing that, I will share with you Superintendent Ayala, who's the current superintendent of our state. One of the first meetings she had after she was confirmed, she shared, and I was there when she said it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to stalk this woman and follow her on Instagram and Facebook and everything else. She said one of the first things she wanted to do in her role as superintendent is put a team together and have everything that is being done in the state examined and balanced up against the state standards. Because she came to her role as a superintendent from a district superintendent. And she said there, in her opinion, there were not enough teachers and principals who were really grounded in the current standards. And so she wanted to balance everything: assessments, kindergarten individual development survey, curriculum. She wanted a complete review done of everything, balancing it up against the standards so that she could begin to re-implement or help us review for some and learn for others how to implement our practices. And everything, professional learning, everything through the standards. It is so huge and complicated. Much info to digest and apply. Yes, and I think that we're going to talk about ways to kind of help you break that down to what's the teachable piece of this, because it is a lot. It certainly is a lot. And so what we want to do is help you chunk it so that you can chew it. Tess, recently graduating from college, I've come to realize there's a lot more to learn and apply. I wouldn't know exactly what all goes with it and when to implement to get everything in. And that's that thing that like kind of keeps us up at night, right, Rachel? I want to reach all of my students, whether it's virtual learning, whether it's face-to-face, or whether it's hybrid. You got into this profession because we know the early childhood is important. You want to reach every child, you want to reach every family, and you want to feel successful at the end of the day. But wow, that's a lot to do. So we're going to spend some time now talking about How do you do that? Thank you all for sharing. What we're doing now is answering this question from that same survey. What professional development activities would be helpful? And here is what educators said. We need instructional supports so that we know how to scaffold and differentiate. And they said, we want to understand how to use a variety of instructional strategies and classroom management techniques to help us interact with the Common Core state standards. So let's jump into it. First, we're going to talk about self-regulation. And the reason why we're going to talk about self-regulation is because of exactly what you see here as the definition. It's children's emerging ability or inability to self-regulate directly impacts their developmental domain and growth. And when we are teaching our children, we need to know where they are developmentally so that it can inform our practice. So in the chat, share what comes to mind when you hear the term self-regulate. What do you think of when you hear the term self-regulation? Okay, Sherry, managing emotions. Is it Sherry or Shari? Sorry about that.
It is Sherry.
Sherry, okay, thank you. Being able to calm oneself down when upset, to be able to control one's emotions. Oh, Leanne, control body and responses in a given situation. Self-control, also being able to consider the feelings of others, ability to make environmentally appropriate decisions. Yes, I love this group. Yes. So self-regulation is all of those things that are so important to us, which is why when we think about where do you start having this conversation? It starts with the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines. The first aspect of the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines is self-regulation. And as you all can see, you were right on the money. It's not solely an emotional aspect of a whole child, right? It's a part, but not whole. It's physiological, it's emotional, it's attention, it's behavior regulation. Within the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines, each of those self-regulation domains has specific standards. And what you see before you is how they're broken down. I want you to pay special attention to that birth to 9 months, 7 months to 18 months, 16 to 24 months, 21 to 36 months. Just use your icon and put your hand up if you notice overlap. Birth to 9 months flows into 7 months to 18 months. 17 to 18 months flows into 16 to 24 months, and so on. There again is that understanding that domains of development are fluid. It's like watercolors. It's not like paint by number. If you remember paint by number, that paint was so thick, you could put that little brush in there and it, if it said number 1 is white, you'd put that white paint on there, you could pick that picture up, you could turn it upside down, you could flip it this way, flip it that way, that paint wouldn't move. It's not like that with watercolors, is it? If you put green watercolor and blue watercolor on the same paper, 9 times out of 10, you're going to look back at that paper, and that blue and that yellow are going to have come together, and it's going to create green because it is fluid. Domains of development is not static, it's fluid. So it is on purpose that these specific standards flow into each other. So now answering that question as to, well, I need to know how to build my teaching practice. What you see before you is how you do that. The indicators for children is the observable activity of children. It is what you will see, it is what you will hear, it is what you will feel and be able to observe children doing or not doing. And it's okay to say that, right? We just said that self-regulation is about children's ability or inability, and it all impacts their developmental domain growth. So we want to know, did we hear it? Did we see it? The indicator is the observable part of that. The strategies for interaction is what the staff is teaching. And we do have a link that you're going to get in your resource page that actually shows you each indicator for each self-regulation domain and each of these specific age groups. It will show you indicators and strategies. Dr. Taylor, why do we want to use the strategies? Because it must be evidence-based. Every Student Succeeds Act, our state plan, says that we will do everything based off of the evidence-based continuum that is within the Every Student Succeeds Act. Plus, I don't know about you, but I'm all for working smarter and not harder. Those strategies for interactions, it can support lesson planning. It can support how you set your classroom up. It can support conversation with teachers. And it helps the educator answer this question. My intent is for this child to know and be able to do. Remember, the Common Core, the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines, the Illinois Early Learning Development Standards, it's twofold. It's what children should know and what they should be able to do. What is the behavior, knowledge, or skill that they should know? And what are they able to do with that behavior, knowledge, or skill? So we move from that point of, I know they know this, I know they know this. Okay, now what can they do with that behavior? What can they do with that knowledge? What can they successfully and continually do with that skill? After the self-regulation domains, the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines is broken down into developmental domains. And what you see before you is the breakdown. Notice it goes from 0 to 36 months. And like the self-regulation domains, each of those domains are broken down into specific categories. Each category has specific standards. Just like that birth to 9, that overlap in the self-regulation domains, it's like that with these teachable domains, developmental domains. And again, the indicator is the observable activity of children. The strategies is the interactions. What is the teacher going to teach? In my mind, I know what it should look like because that strategy for interaction gives me the idea. Now, all I have to do as the educator is determine how I'm going to teach it. For those of you that are directors or administrators on, this can help you understand, okay, what professional learning opportunities do I need for the educators in my care? Because the educators are thinking about what they need to do for the students. As an administrator, you're thinking about what do you need to do for your educators. Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. You've seen this before, showing it again, reminding us it's from age 3 to kindergarten enrollment age. Creates a foundational understanding. Look at that, for who? Families and teachers. So we're all in this together. What is expected? What do we want them to know? What do we want them to be able to do across multiple developmental domains? That's where you start integrating your curriculum. Those of you that are PFA, PFAE, if you're Head Start and you have class monitoring, you're looking across your classroom. Is it literate rich? Is math literacy all over the classroom? Is language literacy all over the classroom? Not just in your reading area or your library area. It should be across domains. Provide support, that's what you're getting today. And then enhances the state's early childhood services by doing what? Aligning preschool standards with existing guidelines of standards for younger and older children. So right there, we're gonna have a little bit of a quiz later on. Nobody go off. It's gonna be easy. But right now, I'm giving you a hint to the answer to the quiz, right? The Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards gives alignment between younger, who's younger, birth to 36 months, and older, who's older, are kindergarten. So if you're in that Head Start, PFA, PFAE realm, you are connected to the earlier, and you're also connected to your kindergarten colleagues. That's why the Pre-2K project is so intentional about saying, we must not be so siloed and not be connecting to what's happening with our kindergarten colleagues. Now, for those of you that are community-based programs, start looking now. What are the districts that are around where you do your work? Reach out to them, and please know that ECPL, the State Board of Education, Kindergarten Individual Development Survey Team is encouraging those districts to reach back out to you. Because ultimately you are graduating students from your home child care facility, from your community-based facility, your Head Start. Ultimately, most of those children end up in a public school district or public charter school district. So it behooves us to have those aligning conversations early. So reach out, and we are encouraging them to reach back. Uses, appropriate uses and expectations for preschoolers when planning for individual children. We are play-based learning. Play-based is the same as inquiry-based, exploration-based. Doesn't mean we're sitting around playing, you know, Barney and Sesame Street all day long. And what do we need to do to implement authentic observational assessments? There are several domains within IELDS. Notice that English language learner, home language development, there are standards for those students as well. And this is not bilingual as in, oh, if they don't speak English, they speak Spanish. We're really shifting away from saying English language learner or dual language learner to a learner, a student who's a multilingual learner. We want to get out of that framework in our mind that there are many other languages besides English and Spanish that are spoken here in Illinois and really across the country. And we do have a flyer that's going to come out in the follow-up email, letting you know about some upcoming opportunities that for educators working with students who are multilingual learners. Here are the learning areas domains, very broad. Each of those domains that you saw is broken down with goals, learning standards, and benchmarks. Each benchmark has a continuum of performance descriptors. So we talked about what this looks like with the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines. This is what it looks like for Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. The benchmark is the intent of the classroom staff. It's what's teachable, it's what's manageable, it's what can be communicated easily with families, students, even 3-year-olds. And when I'm talking to my colleagues to make sure that we have common understanding of the goal that we're working towards. The performance descriptor is the observable activity of children. This is why it does not have to be an either or with, well, I'm focusing on the objectives for development and learning from teaching strategies goal, or I'm focusing on early learning standards, or early learning scale, or I'm focusing on DRDP. It doesn't have to be either or, because that descriptor is giving you the observable activity of children. You see the continuum is exploring, developing, building. And all of those descriptors, as you note them, as you observe them, as they take anecdotal notes or pictures or capture a little video vignette of a child, it all is going to align to when they sit down and they try to say, okay, I've got my teaching strategies benchmarks, or my early learning skill benchmarks, or my core benchmarks that I'm trying to see where this child is in their learning to assess them. Those descriptors give you that information. It also means we don't have to guess, well, I guess they should be doing this. I guess they should be doing that. It gives us an idea of it. Goals are very broad. It's an overview. The learning standard breaks it down a little bit more. That benchmark is where we as educators and staff, where we hang our hat. That's the specific way we're going to help children learn, have the opportunity to learn what we hope to observe them doing. Each set of benchmarks, as I said before, has a correlating descriptor. Notice nothing says mastery. That final spectrum says building, because as children build and move on, then we move them to that next goal within that domain. And we keep going and we keep going, because for us, it's 3, 4, and 5-year-olds according to their birthday, or if they have a documented disability, they could be with you up to age 6. So now here's where we're gonna do some practice and look at one of the standards. What happens if I don't see my students in the IELDS? And I'm in a preschool for all expansion program, and I have all 4-year-olds. Or I'm in a blended PFA and I have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. How do I still use evidence-based instructional strategies? How do I find the baseline and analyze the achievement gap? I'm going to tell you, but before that, I want to see everybody pinky swear with me. You must pledge that you will not leave this webinar. And I'm going to stop sharing because I want to see pinky fair. Put up you can do a thumbs up if you want to. Woohoo! You will not leave this professional learning opportunity and go and tell anyone that Dr. Taylor said, oh, if you're looking at this Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards and you don't feel like your children are operating there, just teach from the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines. That's not what I'm about to say. What I'm about to do is give you a technique and a strategy for how to be true to evidence-based practices, techniques informing your practice, your strategies, how to stay true to that within the standards, okay? Thank you for pinky swearing and thumbs upping, everyone. Thank you. Okay. If I don't see them where I'm at, what do? Didn't the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines say birth to age 3? Didn't we agree that that's on purpose so that there's no overlap? We don't lose any students between that birth to 3 and that 3 to kindergarten enrollment? Didn't the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards say to us that these standards are put in place to align preschool standards for younger and older children? So your younger 3s, you might find them at 36-month-old. Your older 5s might find them in that kindergarten range. So Dr. Taylor, what does that look like? This is literally pulled from a developmental domain guideline. You know, those ages and stages where, you know, at 36-month-old children would do this or that. At 36 months, follow instructions with 2 or 3 steps, can name most familiar things, understands words like in, on, and under, says I, me, we, you, and some plurals, cars, dogs, cats, talks well enough for strangers to understand most of the time. 3-year-old. Here's where we got to that conversation before about maturation. A 36-month-old looks like what you see on the left side of your screen, but an older 3 looks like what you see on the right side of your screen. Let's look for the diamond in the rough. On your left is the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. It's one standard, Learning Standard 1A, demonstrate understanding through age-appropriate responses. Those 4 bullet points you see there are the benchmarks. Notice how that benchmark is teachable. We could sit in our building, we could be colleagues, we could be best of friends, and we could look at learning standard, demonstrate understanding through age-appropriate responses, and we could all come up with, well, for me, that means a student can do this. For me, that means a student can do that, and it would all be different. But look at that first benchmark. Follow simple 1, 2, and 3-step directions. We can easily agree on that. I mean, a 1-step direction is exactly that, a 1-step direction. That's why I said the benchmark is where you teach. So I'm a teacher and I'm looking at that benchmark, and immediately I know I need to plan to give my students the opportunity to learn how to follow a 1, 2, and 3-step direction. Now, I may say, but I'm looking at this and I have a couple of students in my classroom that can't even follow a 1-step direction. I go to the Illinois Early Learning Guideline. I go to that similar standard, children demonstrate ability to engage with and maintain communication with others. I go to that 21-month to 36-month. What does it say? Children maintain social interaction through the pattern of what? Turn taking, and are able to build upon ideas and thoughts conveyed. Then I go to the strategies that's mentioned there. I analyze the gap. So let me go back. This is the I got you preschool. I don't know what your name is, but I see you're taking pictures. Love, love, love that. And I know some of you, I can see you are feverishly like, taking notes. Hold on, Dr. Taylor. So that's why I want to go back, right? So the IELDS, that's where you are now. That's where you want all your students to be. Those are the benchmarks. The IELG is the similar standard. This is the descriptor of that same standard and the same indicator for the IELG. So now for me, if I'm in that Head Start, preschool for all expansion, what I want to happen is what this descriptor says. I have student, and the way the descriptor goes, it starts with, and this isn't going to sound nice, but it's the best terminology that's coming to my mind. Your least able to your most able student, right? So it might be your younger 3, it might be your student with a disability, all the way up to that 3-year-old that you're looking at them and said, this child is 3 going on 30 for real, right? So the descriptors, they are horizontal when it comes to exploring to building, and they are also vertical when it comes to the descriptor of what we see, and they build upon each other. So let's just look at that top bullet point and be thinking. So if what I want to happen is that a student can perform one-step direction stated orally, that's what I want to happen. But then I'm looking and I see that I have a student who can only respond verbally to an adult's question or comment by saying, doing like this, or saying yes or no. I can look at what I want to happen versus what is happening, and then I can do what? Analyze the gap, right? I can then, as the educator, okay, I can look at that indicators, and I can say, this is what I want to happen. This is what is currently happening. And then I'm going to start planning. I'm going to meet the child where they are. But then I'm going to make plans using my understanding, my professional knowledge. It's going to inform what I'm going to teach, how I'm going to teach it, when I'm going to teach it. Do I have any other students that look like that? They might be my small group for the first 10 weeks or the first 4 weeks, because I have this similar group of students that are not exactly where I want them to be, what I would like to happen. I don't have to do it individually unless in my entire class or my entire home-based program, I see, gosh, one of my students is still exactly not where I would want them to be. Then it is individual. But if it's a group of children, then you're going to create your small groups to support those children. When they are in their interest centers, when it is choice time, when they're out there doing their natural thing and they think it's just out there, and we say go play, which I want us to stop doing that. We want to say, okay, it's time for you to go explore. It's time for you to go have some inquiry, independent learning. That way they won't go home and when their family say, what did you do today? It's go play. Right? We say it's go play, it's choice time. Where do you want to play today? Where do you want to play? And then when they go home and tell the parents that they played, and then the parents say, well, all they're doing is playing, we get upset. Let's change our language. That was just a commercial I threw in for free. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. Okay. But our language that we use is important because that's what seeps down into the children's understanding, right, of what they're doing. If we think about this top bullet point of what I want to happen versus what is happening, in the chat, think of something you could do to bridge the gap once you have analyzed the gap of the expectation of the standard and the reality of the student. Go ahead and put that in the chat. And I am watching the time. It is 5:22. We are coming up on our close.
Wow.
And I'll turn you back over to the hands of Susie to close us out. Yes, test, communicating wants, needs, and deciding what is best in the current setting. So Linda, yes, so remember your long-term goal is actually what the standard is telling you, what they should do, know, and be able to do at the end of.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already got your long-term goal, because that overarching goal, which then goes to the standard and then goes to those benchmarks, it's telling you what they should do at the end. So if you've ever heard of understanding by design, also known as UBD, and understanding by design, you literally take yourself to you almost act like it's the end of the school year, and then you work your way backwards. So if I know I want this student to be here in May, then I know by March, they should be doing this. I know in January, they should be doing this. I know by November, they should be doing this. And here's where I am now in October. And you put your practices together going towards what you've already imagined. And I'm a big fan of UBD because what it allows us to do is get out of that moment of, but the kids, they can't do anything. Just doesn't seem like they can't do anything. I'm so lost, I'm so lost, I'm so lost. Or it feels like it's so much that I need them to do, and there's so many standards. It allows you to jump yourself into your future and get out of that they can't do mode into imagining them and into the asset-based holistic student. When you do that, it allows you to kind of jumpstart your thinking to moving towards, okay, I'm operating in the belief that at least I'm going to give this student or my students every opportunity to learn this. Remember that descriptor is the, and I'm watching as you all are coming in. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure I address that. That descriptor is the observable activity. That benchmark is your intent. So as you are making note and you are observing, should you end up with a child where you just say, you know what, something just really seems to be going on here with John Doe or Jane Doe. Now you've got all this evidence-based anecdotals to support what, if anything, needs to be done if it comes to referring the child to rule in or out the need for specialized services. If it is a student with an IEP, you're going back to that receiving IEP and you're saying, okay, let me make sure I've captured everything in there, because that receiving IEP is going to tell you where that, if the child has a disability, what that disability is and how it is impacting them. And it's also going to tell you what accommodations and modifications you would be implementing in your instructional practices. So I'm loving all these. I can unpack the standard a little bit more, assess where they are and scaffold, all of those things. Excellent. So as we come up, and this is a lot of information. Again, you saw Susie shaking her head. When I tell you, we were in meetings for days on end about these standards in 2013, 14, and 14, 15. And especially with COVID, bringing people together for a whole, 6-hour day, it's just not something that is accessible to us right now. But Cindy Berry, who is, the program director, was very clear in saying, but we've got to make sure that people have an opportunity to either become refamiliar, review those standards, or to be introduced to them. So as we reflect, we want to remember the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines, each domain. The indicator is the observable activity of children. The strategies for interactions is the intent of the classroom staff. IELDS, the benchmark, is the intent of the classroom staff. That performance descriptor continuum is the observable activity of children. Everything we've talked about to you today is appropriate for engaging your families, giving them that homeschool connection. You have 2 resources that are going to be on your resource page that you will get. The Illinois Early Learning Project has put together 2 really nice resources about Standard Start at Home to help you have conversations with families about this. We're going to do a quick trivia game here, closing with self-regulation trivia. How many times do you think self-regulation is mentioned in the Illinois Early Learning Development Standards? How many times do you think it's mentioned? It's as important as we know self-regulation is. Put that in the chat. Bobby, lots. Sherry, 20. Leanne, 20. I'm going to move on because I'm trying to be an honest person. It's already 5:29. Guess what? 0. Self-regulation is explicitly mentioned in the Illinois Early Learning Development Standards 0 times. It's explicit in the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines, And we don't see it explicitly mentioned again until we get to the kindergarten individual development survey. And it's mentioned under approaches to learning self-regulation. What's your point, Dr. Taylor? We needed to be together today so that we can have common understanding about what is in the standards, what's not in the standards, how to connect them all, how to use them. Thank you. I don't know how honest I was. Well, it's 5:29, so I did finish before 5:30. Get some rest whenever you can. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn you over to the hands of Susie.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks to Dr. Antoinette Taylor, and thank you again to everybody for your candid discussions today. I think and hope that we will see you at some of the other sessions that are remaining. In the chat room, I did indicate that we will be sharing the flyer in the follow-up email. The next session is on developmentally appropriate practice, scheduled for November 16th, also from 4 to 5. So the link can be found in the flyer. It can be found on the ECPL website at eclearningil.org. Or I actually just listed the registration link in the chat room. So if you want to register for that, you can just click on that now, because that's all we have to share for today. We finished before my faux pas, 6 o'clock. So if anything, that's even better, even if we're 1 minute over. So thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and we wish you well, stay safe, and we hope to see you at the next session. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.